and welcome to this week's edition of the Pete Mezzetti Show. I'm your host. This evening's topic is a general overview of the State Comptroller's Office and what exactly the State Comptroller does. And with me to discuss this evening's topic is the aforementioned State Comptroller for the State of Connecticut, Kevin Lembo. Kevin, welcome.
It's great to be here, Pete.
Nice to be back.
I hope I'm the right person to tell what the Comptroller is and why we need one.
Well, we'll get to that within the next half hour. How are you? How you been?
I'm great.
Good.
I'm great.
Good. Thanks for coming down.
Happy to be here. Thanks.
So for those of us that don't know who Kevin Lembo is, I guess my question is who's Kevin Lembo?
Well, Kevin Lembo is just a guy from Guilford
All right.
who got elected to be state comptroller in 2010.
Nice.
And the comptroller is the state's fiscal guardian. That's sort of the unofficial title of the office, but what it means in short is that I pay the bills and I buy health care for state employees and retirees, and I administer a pension program, and I run the core financial system, which is the blinking financial heart of the state. So it's a busy place, about 300 employees, 2 different locations, and we get a lot of work done every day.
You mean 2 different locations, as in one the Capitol and one at...
No, we've got a location at 55 Elm and a location at 55 Farmington, so we're right outside the Capitol.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. I don't have an office in the Capitol.
For some reason, I thought you did.
No.
So exactly, you said you basically were the holder of the money for the state of Connecticut. What do you think are the top issues facing the state right now?
Well, look, there's a couple of things. So the comptroller, for starters, being the fiscal guardian, means I get to and have to, by statute and by the Constitution, call the balls and strikes as I see them on the finances of the state. Okay. So to that end, I put out a monthly letter every month on the 1st, and it's uniquely called the Letter of the First. So, in case. And in that letter, I lay out what the legislature and the governor had budgeted and where they are versus that budget based on their spending patterns and what revenue is coming in. So the issues that have been facing the state now for many years, unfortunately, is the recession that hit this country and the slow pace at which Connecticut is climbing out of that hole. And things are generally pointed in the right direction, but the recovery's been like sort of a low and slow takeoff pattern. You know, when you feel like a big airplane needs more runway, that's sort of where we are. But we've got loft and we're headed in the right direction.
Now, what are some of how's the state looking financially and fiscally so far?
So in the Letter of the First for August 1st, I reported that the state would end the last fiscal year, which actually ended in June, with about $121 million surplus. Okay. Now, the interesting thing about that number is it bounced around quite a bit. There was some time in the spring that we thought that number was going to be almost $500 million, but certain revenue categories didn't come in as projected, and certain expenses came online, and all that leads to an erosion of any surplus number. And so it looks like we'll hold at about $121 million, and now all eyes are turned on the new fiscal year. That started July 1, 2014, and will continue now until June 30th, 2015.
That's right. Yeah. Now, as far as you said, you're the person in charge of pensions, and how does that work?
So the comptroller administers the state employee retirement system, the pension program for state employees, and then we also run a couple of smaller pension programs, one for judges, one municipal-focused one. And that's, as you might imagine, a busy place. The treasurer, Denise Napier, actually invests the funds for the pension fund. Really? But we do the calculations, and we make the monthly payments to the retirees, and we make sure folks are in the right categories and they're getting any associated health benefit that might go with their pension. So that's really our piece of responsibility. And we also work with the State Retirement Commission, which is a management labor body that comes together to supervise the administration, and they are ultimately the fiduciaries of the program.
Now, as far as the insurance aspect of things, how does that work?
The health insurance?
Yes.
So most state employees, by virtue of the fact that they are employees, get access to a health benefit. And our retirees do as well. It's part of the negotiated contract that the state of Connecticut has made with the State Employee Bargaining Coalition. And so that health plan is run through 2 of the major insurers in Connecticut, those being United and Anthem. And it's a pretty traditional health plan in that we have co-pays, and we don't tend to have deductibles. And over the years, it's sort of done what it was supposed to do. It provided health care and we paid the bills. But with the changing face of healthcare and with the impact of the Affordable Care Act and with the changing landscape as doctors get bought up by hospitals and become employees in some cases, we're looking at it in a slightly different way, and that is, what is our role as a large purchaser of healthcare in the changes in this marketplace, and trying to always provide the best possible health care we can to our employees and retirees and their dependents, but also to make sure that we are good stewards of the taxpayer's dollar and don't spend any more than we need to, and always look for ways to find efficiency and savings in the process.
Now, are there ways of finding savings in the process, and how are they?
There are a couple of ways. One is just sort of hard-nosed negotiations. So, for example, we renegotiated our pharmaceutical contract recently, and we were able to realize, above $10 million in savings in that contract, which is a huge number. Right. And then on the healthcare delivery side, the governor and his folks, together with labor, negotiated something we call the Health Enhancement Program. And it's an interesting program. It sort of takes all the things we used to know about healthcare and turns them on their ear. In that, historically, an employer, let's say a private sector employer, will get a premium bill from their insurance agent that says, this is what healthcare is going to cost you for your employees for next year. And if you couldn't afford it, you would tell your broker that, and they would say, well, you can get the price down by raising copays, putting in deductibles, shrinking networks, and essentially doing things that push patients and their families further away from healthcare. Right. And I would sort of, it would be a problem if I didn't acknowledge as well that 6 years as the state's healthcare advocate before this sort of influences my thinking on this point. We've done the opposite, and that is we waive certain copays for certain things that we want people to get. Mammograms, regular colonoscopies if you're due, physicals. And if you have certain chronic illnesses, heart disease, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, we're also waiving some copays in that space as well in an effort to get people to really do what they're supposed to do. That, together with better information for our employees around appropriate emergency room utilization, for example, have led to a significant savings, $100 million in savings the first year, 30 in the second, 30 in the third. Wow. Those numbers won't hold because we're getting close to hitting the bottom of the saving opportunity, but it's real money. And our outcomes are better. We're seeing our chronically ill population going to the doctor, taking their meds, where some of them weren't doing that before. And we're seeing emergency room utilization down for our employees. And all of that is money savings for the residents of Connecticut. Exactly. So feeling really good about what we've done.
Which is also a good thing, because you're trying to save money for the state, and that's always a good, always a wonderful thing.
If we can provide better care at a lower price, it's a win-win for everybody.
Exactly, it is, and it doesn't. If it's a lower price, that also doesn't mean with the lower price you get the lower tier of care.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know that you were the head. Before you were comptroller,
I was the state healthcare advocate.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Tell us about that.
Healthcare advocate in Connecticut is unique in that it's an independent office and it's charged with advocating for patients and their families and their dealings with the insurance industry. So mom goes in, doctor says she needs a certain procedure, insurance company says no, which they sometimes do. That person or their family can call the healthcare advocate and get assistance in appealing that decision. And we saved millions of dollars for Connecticut consumers in that, and I loved it. It was a part of government where you get to see real impact every day. You'd go home and put your head on the pillow and know, gosh, I know that Mrs. Jones got her because we intervened. So
now, when you became comptroller, obviously they gave somebody else your job.
They did, yes.
Okay, good.
Vicki Veltri is the state healthcare advocate, and she was my general counsel when I was there. And she's doing a bang-up job, and frankly has taken the office in greater directions. When I founded it was like this, and then we left it like this, and now she's made it a really significant agency doing real important work, particularly around the implementation of the Affordable Care Act.
Well, let's talk about the Affordable Care Act before we go into the break. Maybe explain to our viewers and our listeners exactly what the Affordable Care Act is and how it works.
Yeah, well, some people call it Obamacare, some people call it the Affordable Care Act.
All right.
And we can have, I think, disagreement on certain elements of the plan, but at its heart, it really is about trying to make sure people get access to health insurance and therefore get access to health care. And it's built on the premise that as a nation, we really cannot sit by while our neighbors are sick and can't get access to care. So it has its bumps very clearly, but I'm pretty proud of Connecticut. I haven't been directly involved in the implementation because my work has taken me in a slightly different direction.
Sure.
But Lieutenant Governor Nancy Wyman is co-chairing that oversight board, and nationally they've been pointed to as a model for getting people who were most vulnerable enrolled and onto the insurance rolls, and therefore seeing their doctor. So so far so good.
Really? All right. Now, how well do you work with the governor and the lieutenant governor's office in your role as comptroller?
Very closely, for lots of reasons. You know, the way the laws of Connecticut are written, they require that we work closely together on certain issues. I also work together with them because I know them and like them in many cases.
Exactly.
But that's not to say that as independently elected constitutional officers, and just sort of a little primer on that, you know, we've got 6 constitutional officers, as you know. You know, the governor is number 1, lieutenant governor is number 2, secretary of state is number 3, treasurer is 4, I'm 5, and the attorney general is number 6. But aside from the governor, lieutenant governor, who are elected together, the rest of us are all elected independent. So while we collaborate and we really work together to try to forward the interests of the state and the taxpayers of the state, we also at some points disagree on certain policy directions as well. And that's sort of the point of having independently elected people who are put there based on their credential and qualifications for that office. So, but we're in constant interaction, whether it's the governor's budget office or the Department of Social Services on budget issues. You know, all of the government agencies, we pay their bills. So we have to interact with them on a regular basis, and it's been pretty good.
All right, well, Kevin Lembo, we're actually about to go into a break. Would you mind sticking around for another segment?
I'm happy to.
All right, we'll be right back.
They said I couldn't dream. Called me a piece of trash and swore that's all I'd ever be. Said a bottle couldn't see the ocean. Give up. Go back to the dumpster. But I didn't listen. I made my way. And now, I am what I've always wanted to be.
To this week's edition of the Pete Mezzetti Show. I'm your host, sitting here with State Comptroller Kevin Lembo. Kevin, welcome back.
Happy to be here. Thanks, Pete.
Thanks for coming down. So we talked about the first segment. We talked about the state and all the fiscal responsibilities and the surplus. Let's talk about transparency let's open the second segment talking about transparency in the state of Connecticut. Maybe you can tell us about that?
Sure. Happy to. Look, when I ran for comptroller in 2009 into 10, or 10 into 11 rather, we ran on transparency and accountability and common good. And those 3 buckets, if you will, of thought have really driven the work that we've done in the office, which is great. You know, there's something I don't know, sometimes surprising to voters that when you say, please elect me, this is what I plan to do, that you go back to them and say, okay, this is what I said I was going to do, and this is what I'm actually doing. You know, it's a nice sort of check on. Did you keep your promise, if you will? And one of those big issues, as you say, is transparency. So we went into the office, and the comptroller clearly holds on to a lot of data. I mean, we sit on a treasure trove of financial information and other kinds of information. So before we started moving around, pointing our fingers at other people, saying you have to be more transparent in government, we tried to get our own house in order. So we launched Open Connecticut shortly thereafter, and for the first time ever, put the state's financial information up online for people to be able to see it, manipulate it, download it, ask informed questions about it. And look, the baseline reason we did that is because it's the taxpayers' money and they have a right to know. That is codified in law and something we all have to agree on, because if not, then you get hinkiness in government, and we don't want that.
No.
And the second is, frankly, as government operators, people who are inside trying to perform certain government functions, if we can frame the conversation with data that helps us have conversation about real things that are going on versus what I like to call the cranky uncle conversation, which is, Thanksgiving and somebody says something cranky about, and it's always sort of 3 degrees off what's correct, but close enough. That takes us off in a direction of wasted time in many cases when we have real issues. And if we focus on the real data and the real issues, we can make informed decisions on how to move forward. So we did that, Open Connecticut, and then we started looking at economic development activity in the state that Connecticut spends a lot of money on. And governors around the country tend to do similar things. They try to encourage innovation, and they also try to make sure that big employers either come or don't leave, right? And part of the way they do that is through grants and loans and forgivable loans. But I needed to be able to quantify whether those investments were paying off or not. So I went in search of the data to support that analysis, and essentially found that I wasn't allowed to know, as the comptroller, some of the information necessary to do that evaluation. So if I'm not allowed to know it, I assume you're not allowed to know it. And that struck me as just problematic on lots of levels. Problematic because, again, it's public information. And problematic because I think it sort of raises the hackles of the residents of the state and makes them very suspicious when they're told you can't know that, right? So we introduced a bill that would have brought greater transparency to economic development activity, passed 145 to 0 in the House, and then ran out of time on the Senate calendar. But the governor, to his credit, signed an executive order shortly thereafter that took all the data elements of the bill and put them into law by his signature in an executive order. So the governor's office and Department of Economic and Community Development have been doing their thing and trying to get that information up online. And then we're starting to do our analysis, and we've refocused on Open Connecticut. So we launched Open Connecticut 2.0. That is much more appealing to look at and interesting, and the functionality is better. And we just had a meeting last week about what the next iteration of that may look like, and trying to move Connecticut from, in some cases, dead last in our transparency compared to other states to up to the top of the pack. And my goal is to make Connecticut the most transparent government in the nation, and I'm working on it.
There you go. Now, what type of information can people find on Open Connecticut?
So everything from the state budget to borrowing to revenue numbers, and then it's not just sort of PDFs or pictures of documents that you can look at or not look at or print. You can manipulate the data. You can do your own analysis. The idea being that government is not the only body that is capable of analyzing this information. And frankly, you want independent review of this information because it's hard for anybody to hear, you said X was going to be the case, but it turned out not to be so based on the evidence. But we need to know that so we don't continue to do the same thing over and over again expecting a different result, right? So it's been interesting to watch folks take up this information and do with it what they think is appropriate. They can't hurt the books. They can't,
of course not.
But they can take it away and perform an analysis. For example, if you wanted to know what asthma rates were in communities based on direct community investment and education outcomes, you could do all that by pulling data from the data portal that the governor's office owns or runs, and information on the financials from us. So it's if you're a data nerd, and I proudly say that I am one,
there you go.
It's a happy place to be.
There you go. And it's I'm assuming it's constantly updated, so you get the most
updates nightly. So you
right.
can really see, and we're getting to the point where you can drill further and further down. It used to be pots of money, then agency budgets, and then categories within agencies. So our point is to get way down, and we're not quite there yet.
Okay.
Till you get to all the way down to the contract level. So you can see what was the contract tied to the payment for the snow plowing by the
Right.
Westbrook Board of Education.
Right.
How much did they pay? To whom did they pay it? And what's the link to the Connecticut state budget?
Really?
So it's
my goodness. Pretty detailed.
It's exciting. It's
It
exciting.
is.
Yeah.
It is. And if people go onto your website for your office on your site, what type of information can they find?
Oh, they can find a ton of information.
All right.
But if they're looking for these data sets
Sure.
and to poke around there,
Yeah.
there's a big old graphic
There's a button.
that says Open Connecticut, and
right.
it's a picture of the Capitol with some open windows.
All right.
And all they need to follow that link through. And then we're looking for feedback as well. So
Okay.
if people find a broken link, or if they think things could be formatted or explained in a better way, they just need to respond to the address that's there, and we take that criticism on board and try to make it better.
I was going to say, and somebody in your office checks that and corresponds and does
Yes,
all that fun stuff.
yes. If I had my way, we would check it obsessively, and I'm sure we do. I'm sure we do.
So how's the state looking as far as budget-wise for the fiscal year that we're in now?
Yeah, so it's too early to tell. Things seem to be tracking according to the original budgeted numbers.
Okay.
There's been a little dust up with the Department of Social Services and the federal part of the federal government that runs Medicaid, and there's some claims that are in dispute that they need to really get to the bottom of. I suspect they will, but if they don't, there'll be a little bit of a shortfall in that category, and they'll have to figure out how to close that. So a little early to tell at this point, but look, the economy, as I said at the beginning, is recovering. It's recovering slowly,
Right.
and it's cold comfort. If you are still looking for a job, or you feel like you're underemployed or trapped in a job and want a new opportunity, we're adults, and it takes time to dig out. This is an unprecedented hole that we've been in, and it's going to take some time to dig out of it.
Exactly. Now, I got to ask you, as far as we're talking about money, we're talking about the state, how do you, I guess the word is allocate, how do you allocate the funds for like the winter?
Oh, well, that is
That's
really
not you.
done. No, it's really done at the agency level. So
Okay.
DPW, that's in
right.
charge, and DOT, that are in charge of
Sure.
roads and salt and plows and all of that stuff. They put their best, and I'm not going to say guess, because it's not. It's a
Right.
pretty well historic, trend-driven analysis of what resources they will need.
Okay.
And then you hope Mother Nature cooperates.
Exactly.
So when you think about the
Sure.
budget making process on a $20+ billion budget,
Sure.
it's a pretty sophisticated undertaking.
It is.
So each of those agencies, from social services to corrections to DPW and DOT, they each have an internal process that leads to a budget number that gets embedded in the budget, voted on by the legislature, and with any luck signed by the governor. So.
And I'm assuming you have to present your budget to the governor every
We
year.
present our agency budget. There's some interesting conversation about whether the constitutional officers who are independently elected and have our own statutory and constitutional authority should have to get permission from another constitutional officer for our budgets. But that's an argument we'll save for another day.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Well, because if, look, any governor, I'm not saying this governor,
Right.
but if any
But any
governor
governor,
or their budget chief wants to impede the ability of a constitutional officer to do their work as required, that's a problem.
Right.
So you can't have those things stepping on each other. They have to live in harmony.
Exactly. Now, how many people do you have in your office?
We've got about 280 employees. Yeah, no, it's
Holy
a big place.
cow.
I always joke that it's the agency that lives under the stairs, that most people don't think about the comptroller's office until something breaks.
Right.
So for a long time, the budget number would come out, and the budget number is what it is.
Right.
But since the election in 2010, the economy, for obvious reasons,
Right.
and healthcare, for other obvious
Obvious
reasons,
reasons.
have been top of mind in the public sort of discourse
Right.
around government, both federal and state. And it just so happens that the comptroller's office, and the comptroller, by extension, is in the center of many of those arguments. So these are people who do hard work every day, good work,
Right.
and are really customer service driven. Not everyone, most. And we try to remind them every day that we've got customers and we're only there because they allow us to be there.
Exactly, and you guys handle from soup to nuts in your office.
Absolutely right.
You guys handle everything.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Obviously,
a ton
you
of
like
electronic information.
Exactly, and like you said, as far as your website goes, you can find all the state details and.
Absolutely right. Yeah, and see what we've been working on. The Man Up Health program, the Health Enhancement program, the sort of other work around transparency that we've been up to. It's been a very busy term.
What's the Man Up Health program?
Man Up really comes out of an observation in our data that the men in our health plan were not using the health plan as well as the women in our health plan. And most of us probably see that in our life.
Okay.
Sometimes the dads do one thing and the moms do another
Right,
thing.
exactly.
And women, frankly, have been cleaning our clock over a lot of years. When mammograms and regular screenings and all of that, and men need to do better. And so it's a little hard to get guys who many were trained as boys to walk it off. Right? Shake it off, you'll be fine, tough it out, man up.
Exactly.
We want to flip that on its head because there is really nothing macho about being sick and undiagnosed and then potentially dying prematurely and leaving your family without you and maybe your paycheck. So we've been driving that information to our employees and then also to the general public because it's an important message. And if we can get guys to understand that they'll be happier and healthier if they get their regular screenings, and their family will be better off. The responsible thing to do is to make your doctor's appointment.
All right. Well, we're about to say goodnight, Kevin. So I just want to thank you for coming on down.
Thanks.
Kevin Lembo, thanks for coming down. On behalf of Kevin, I'm Peter. Thanks. Good night, and we'll see you next week.